Sit back and enjoy an hour of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started.
In France, the normal color of toilet paper is pink instead of white, and toilet paper in other colors is also popular. This preference began to become popular in the 1960s, when interior design gained more importance in French homes. Pink is perceived as warmer and more aesthetic, and it also helps hide small imperfections compared to traditional white. The United States Navy began using Xbox controllers to operate submarine periscopes, reducing the time it takes for operators to learn and cutting costs by more than $37,000. Recycling a glass bottle can save enough energy to power a television for 3 hours. This is because melting recycled glass requires a lower temperature than producing it from raw materials such as sand and soda ash. In addition, glass can be recycled repeatedly without losing quality, reducing both energy consumption and pollutant emissions. When octopuses are born, they are as small as a flea. Upon hatching, they measure only a few tenths of an inch and float as part of the plankton during their first weeks of life. At that stage, they are very vulnerable, and few survive to reach adulthood. On average, dogs can understand up to 165 words, and the most intelligent dogs up to 250, reaching an intellect similar to that of a 2.5-year-old child. Horses adapt their behavior according to people's emotions. If a person near a horse is nervous, the horse will try to be more subtle in its movements to appear less threatening. When you eat a spicy dish, your brain releases endorphins and dopamine. That is why many people love spicy food. Capsaicin, the compound responsible for the heat, activates the same receptors that detect heat and pain, so the body responds as if it were facing a mild threat. That reaction produces a feeling of euphoria and pleasure that can become addictive for some people. In 2011, Japanese scientists won a prize for designing a fire alarm for deaf people. The system uses vaporized wasabi to alert them. The team, linked to Shiga University of Medical Science, discovered that the strong, irritating component of wasabi stimulates nasal receptors even during sleep. The kilometer zero of French roads is in front of the door of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. It is marked by a bronze star in the pavement. A study on bees discovered that even though they seem very hardworking, almost 25% of the bees living in a hive do nothing at all. They are just standing there or flying around. There was a pterodactyl that was too large to fly. Its wings reached the size of a jet. Generally, this creature had to find high ground in order to launch itself and glide, something not very practical. Sleeping without socks makes dreams lighter and allows excess body heat to be released through the feet, achieving better rest. 65% of the world consumes more goat milk than regular cow milk. This is largely because goats adapt better to arid climates and mountainous terrain, which makes raising them easier in regions of Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. In addition, goat milk is often easier for many people to digest and requires fewer resources to produce. In 2007, 14 squirrels were arrested in Iran accused of espionage. According to reports circulated at the time by local media, it was suspected that the animals carried tracking devices placed by foreign services. Snails can take naps of up to 3 years. In reality, what they do is not sleep as such, but enter a state of estivation or hibernation when conditions are extremely dry or cold. During that time, they reduce their metabolic activity to a minimum and conceal the opening of their shell with a mucus layer to conserve moisture until the environment becomes favorable again. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there are fish called Goliath tigerfish that sometimes eat crocodiles when they are hungry. This freshwater predator can measure more than 3 feet and has long, sharp teeth similar to those of a shark, capable of tearing large prey apart. It lives mainly in the Congo River and is considered one of the most feared and powerful fish in Africa. A lion's roar can reach 115 decibels. That is louder than a heavy metal concert or a lawnmower. In addition, it can be heard several miles away in the savannah, especially at night when sound travels better. They use it to mark territory, coordinate with the pride, and scare away potential rivals. The entire surface of the United Kingdom, 94,000 square miles, fits perfectly within the territory of the state of Chihuahua in Mexico, which has 95,000 square miles. The creator of the famous YouTube series Bad Lip Reading discovered that talent when his mother suddenly became deaf and he had to learn how to read lips. Shortly afterward, he realized that whenever he tried, what he understood was complete nonsense. So he took advantage of it, and now millions have watched his videos. 95% of all the oceans have not yet been explored. Much of the seafloor remains unmapped at high resolution, especially in abyssal zones that exceed several miles in depth. The extreme pressure, total darkness, and high cost of expeditions make exploring these areas technically complex, so we still do not know countless species and ecosystems hidden beneath the water. In Romania, there is an amusement park that is underground in a cave left by an old salt mine. The place has attractions such as bowling, mini-golf, and a Ferris wheel. In Great Britain in medieval times, there was a job called bird scarer, and it was usually done by young people when they began their working life. But they had to go back to using scarecrows because there were few people due to the Great Plague of London that happened around that time. The popular singer Rihanna was a naval cadet who trained with the Barbados Army, and the singer Chantel was her military instructor. People who eat slowly are 42% less likely to be overweight or obese than those who eat quickly. Eating calmly allows the brain to register the feeling of fullness before consuming more calories than necessary, since the hormonal signals that indicate you are full take several minutes to activate. In addition, chewing more slowly improves digestion and promotes a more mindful relationship with food. 80% of the men who were born in the Soviet Union in the year 1923 did not survive the Second World War. The characteristic shape of the Millennium Falcon, the famous ship from Star Wars, is based on a hamburger that director George Lucas was eating while chatting with the designers. The original design was very different and also appears in the movie. Mice can start having babies at just 3 months after being born. They multiply like mice. In addition, their gestation period lasts only between 19 and 21 days, and each litter can have up to 10 offspring. Under favorable conditions, a single pair can generate hundreds of descendants in 1 year, which explains their rapid proliferation. Ants deliberately cultivate a species of edible fungi inside their nests so they can feed themselves when food is scarce. Some species, such as leafcutters, collect plant fragments not to eat them directly, but to use them as a substrate where the fungus they actually consume grows. This agricultural system has existed for millions of years and functions with surprisingly complex organization. The Baradla Cave in Hungary has the largest stalactites in the world. The cave measures 16 miles. Any liquid that is floating in space will take on a spherical shape because of surface tension. This happens because, in microgravity, there is no dominant force that flattens or deforms the fluid, so the molecules stick together, forming the shape that minimizes its surface. That is why on the International Space Station, astronauts can create almost perfect water bubbles that look like small transparent spheres floating in the air. The exoskeleton of ants is so strong that they can withstand being stepped on by a human and remain alive. But please do not try it, because even if they stay alive, it does not look good at all. Most toilets in the world flush in the musical key of E-flat major. This is not a coincidence. Many manufacturers adjust the design of the siphon and the speed of the flow so that the sound is more pleasant to the human ear. E-flat major is perceived as a stable and harmonious tone, which helps make a loud, everyday noise less annoying. In Japan, it is well regarded to take a nap at work. It is called inemuri, and if someone does it, it is because they are tired from working hard. The term literally means being present while sleeping, and it is interpreted as a sign of commitment and dedication. However, it is not about sleeping deeply, but about a brief nod off without leaving the work environment. The French already tried on 2 occasions, in 1793 and in 1897, to establish a new system of measuring time in which days lasted 10 hours, hours 100 minutes, and minutes 100 seconds. But apparently no one liked it, or it did not become fashionable. An Apple programmer kept working for 3 more months after his project was canceled. Other employees helped him get into the building, and the project, which was a graphing calculator, was eventually released. Ireland's first Olympic medal in history was won by Jack Butler Yeats in the painting category at the 1924 Olympic Games in Paris, France. The actors who played the characters Walter White, Skyler, and Saul Goodman from the series Breaking Bad once appeared on the comedy series Seinfeld during the 90s. Scientists discovered that cheetahs especially like the scent of the fragrance Obsession by Calvin Klein, after they used a variety of scents to attract the felines to cameras. The man who voiced Tigger in the original version of Winnie the Pooh also invented the first artificial heart. It was Paul Winchell, an American ventriloquist and actor who was also an inventor. In 1963, he obtained a patent for an artificial heart design, which later served as the basis for subsequent medical developments in this field. Platypuses are so strange that when the person who discovered them sent a stuffed specimen to London for study, they accused him of having glued different animals together to trick them and play a joke on them. The term pinup model or pinup girl comes from the photos or drawings of women that were mass-produced so that soldiers could hang them on the wall with a pin during the Second World War. In 2013, there was an outage on Google servers that rendered all its platforms unusable. At that moment, global internet traffic decreased by 40%. A man in Alaska was being charged $65,000 for dental work. Since it was too expensive, he instead traveled almost 3,730 miles to Mexico, where he had the same work done for only $3,000 and with the same quality. The butter knife was invented in France in the medieval period, and not for butter, but to prevent people from continuing to use cutlery as weapons. A soccer player named Wayne Shaw, who at that time was the goalkeeper for the Sutton team, was fined £375 and suspended for 2 months for influencing the betting market during an FA Cup game in England against Arsenal. People began betting that he would eat a pie on the substitutes bench as a joke, but when he saw that there was so much money against it, Wayne decided to actually eat a pie in the 82nd minute of that game. But his plan, as we have already seen, did not work. In 2014, a tree that was planted in honor of the Beatles member George Harrison was ironically devoured by a plague of beetles. They had to plant a new tree that was more resistant to those insects. Most plants can remember things that happen to them for up to 1 month. Although they do not have a brain, they can store information at the cellular level through chemical and electrical changes. Experiments have shown that some species modify their response to stress or light based on previous experiences, a phenomenon known as plant memory or physiological memory. The United States had a plan to release thousands of trained bats with small bombs over Japan in case the atomic bomb did not work. The project, known as Bat Bomb, sought to take advantage of the fact that many Japanese buildings were made of wood and paper to cause massive fires. Although tests showed some potential, the plan was canceled before being implemented in combat. Many fans have tried to reach Chris McCandless's bus since watching the movie Into the Wild. Most have failed in the attempt, and there are even 3 cases in which they were found dead, just like what happened to Chris. As a gesture of gratitude for the help they received during the Second World War, in the Netherlands, they created a variety of tulips that resembled the flag of Canada. The gesture symbolizes Dutch gratitude for the role of Canadian forces in the liberation of the country, and for having given refuge to the royal family during the occupation. Before color television was invented, 75% of people said they dreamed in black and white. Now, it is only 12%. Some researchers believe that constant exposure to black and white images may have influenced the way people remembered their dreams. With the arrival of color television and digital media, most people began reporting dreams full of color. The city of Rome in Italy is slightly farther north on planet Earth than New York, even though it may not seem that way on maps. Megapodes, also known as mound builders, could have been given a simpler name like chicken, already have all their feathers when they hatch from the egg. They break their shell with a kick, unlike all other birds that use their beak, and they can also fly from the first day. People are more likely to use swear words as a way to express themselves than to insult others. Various studies in psychology have found that this type of language is often used to release tension, intensify emotions, or strengthen social bonds, especially among friends. It has even been observed that saying swear words can increase pain tolerance in certain situations. An architecture student detected a serious design flaw in a Manhattan skyscraper in the 70s, helping to prevent an imminent collapse. It was the Citicorp Center building, now known as 601 Lexington Avenue. The analysis revealed that certain structural joints could fail under diagonal winds. Thanks to the warning, secret repairs were carried out that reinforced the structure and prevented a possible disaster. NASA is researching how they can create spacecraft with warp drive propulsion, something like what Star Trek ships use to travel. If they truly achieve this, it would be possible to travel to Alpha Centauri, which is 4.3 light-years away, in just 2 weeks. Hundreds of professors and archaeologists who exist today took inspiration from the character Indiana Jones. There is a statistic of the exponential increase in new archaeology students when the famous movie starring Harrison Ford began to be released. The quietest room in the world, which has extreme sound isolation, is so quiet that you can hear your own blinking. In anechoic chambers, such as the one at Orfield Laboratories in Minnesota, the noise level is so low that people begin to perceive their heartbeat, breathing, and even the movement of their joints. Staying too long there can be disorienting, since the brain is accustomed to always having some background sound. The recommendation to drink 8 glasses of water a day actually has no scientific basis. Someone simply came up with it and published it. In reality, the correct approach is to drink water whenever we are thirsty, especially if you are an older person, if you exercise, or if the weather is very hot. In reality, purified water is not going to run out, since dirty water or seawater can be cleaned and desalinated. But because doing that requires a lot of energy, it will become more expensive. In 1931, a book titled 100 Authors Against Einstein was published, in which they discredited the work of the famous physicist. Einstein's comment about it was, "If I were truly wrong, one person would have been enough." 4% of the sand that makes up the beach of Normandy in France is made from the munitions that were fired on the famous D-Day during the Second World War. The artist or group that has sold the most records in all of history are the Beatles, with 600 million albums sold. Their impact was not only commercial, but also cultural, as they transformed the music industry in the 1960s with innovations in songwriting, production, and marketing. Aluminum used to be the most valuable metal on Earth. Only the richest people could eat with aluminum utensils. Those less wealthy than them used gold. This was because before efficient industrial methods to extract it existed, isolating pure aluminum was extremely difficult and expensive. It was not until the end of the 19th century, with new chemical and electrical processes, that its price dropped drastically, and it went from being a symbol of luxury to an everyday material. In 1992, a man in Great Britain was searching for a hammer he had lost with a metal detector, but instead he found a Roman-era treasure containing more than 15,000 gold coins. The government gave £1,750,000 to him and also to the owner of the land for the discovery. Shortly afterward, he found his hammer. A beer company in Florida, United States, developed a completely edible beer can holder, and the rings are just as strong as plastic ones. The oldest suspended monorail in the world is located in Germany. It is the Wuppertal-Schwebebahn. It was inaugurated in 1901, runs 9 miles, and is suspended 39 feet above the ground. Timothy Hunter is a DC Comics character who wears glasses, lost his mother when he was young, discovered he was destined to be a powerful wizard, and also has an owl as a pet. By the way, he appeared 7 years before the first Harry Potter book. Paso de los Caracoles is a border crossing between Chile and Argentina. It is an extreme road full of sharp curves. It is located in the Andes mountain range at more than 9,800 feet of elevation, and it connects Santiago with Mendoza through the Cristo Redentor Tunnel. Somali pirates originally emerged as a response to the pollution of their coasts by Europeans. After the collapse of the central government in the 1990s, many foreign fleets began fishing illegally in Somali waters, and there were even reports of toxic waste dumping. The lowest airport is located in the Netherlands. It is Schiphol Airport, and it is almost 16 feet below sea level. There is a species of bamboo that grows at a speed of 35 inches per day. That is almost 1.5 inches per hour. No other plant grows that fast. St. Lucia is the only country in the world that has a woman's name. It was named that because the French arrived there on December 13th, which is St. Lucy's Day. Right now, Mars is a planet completely inhabited by robots. Various vehicles sent by space agencies explore its surface and atmosphere, collecting data about geology, climate, and possible traces of ancient water. Bugs Bunny got his name from the nickname of animator Ben Bugs Hardaway, who asked one of the Looney Tunes artists to draw a rabbit. The animator then wrote Bugs on the rabbit to distinguish it. After appearing in some cartoons without a name, the producer at that time saw the drawing and decided to give him the name we all know. Mentally training for something makes you improve. For example, you can practice a musical instrument, or you can strengthen your muscles by imagining a workout. Your mind will hardly notice the difference, but obviously it is better to actually do it. Tennis players are forbidden from using profanity at the Wimbledon tournament. To enforce that rule, the referees have to know swear words in every language. Only 3 people have been to the deepest point of the ocean, and one of those people also directed the 2 highest-grossing movies in history, James Cameron. In 2013, 3,000 workers at a clothing factory in Bangladesh organized a strike that was not to demand better working conditions or higher wages. It was so that management would do something to scare away the ghost that lived in the bathroom. Since sharks do not have a rib cage with ribs, if they leave the water, their own weight can crush them. Their skeleton is made mainly of cartilage, a much more flexible and lighter tissue than bone, which gives them great agility when swimming. Without the support of water distributing their weight, their organs can become compressed and seriously hinder their breathing and circulation. Before trees were common on the planet, I am talking about millions of years ago, the Earth was filled with giant fungi that measured up to 26 feet tall. In Chestnut Ridge Park, in the state of New York, there is a waterfall that has a natural gas leak inside it that has been called the eternal flame since it has never gone out. In the 16th century in Turkey, coffee consumption was punished harshly, even with the death penalty, because many people drank it excessively to the point of appearing possessed, according to people of that time. The voice of Plankton's computer wife in the English version of SpongeBob SquarePants is actually the wife of Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, who, by the way, is also the pirate who sometimes appears. If you find a dinosaur fossil in your backyard in the United States, legally, it belongs to you. This is because on private land, fossils are usually considered part of the property of the landowner, unlike those found on federal or state lands, where the law requires permits, and collecting them without authorization can be illegal. That is why many important discoveries come from ranches and private properties. The ancient Greeks came up with the Cyclopes after they found a mammoth fossil and did not know exactly what it was. The enormous skull had a large central cavity where the trunk would have been, which could have been interpreted as the socket of a single eye. Without knowledge of paleontology, the most logical explanation for them was to attribute it to a gigantic and mythological creature. Russia produces 1 million more barrels of oil than Saudi Arabia each day. A duel between 3 people is called a truel. Although it is not a formal term widely used in legal or historical language, it became popular in Anglo culture as truel to describe strategic confrontations between 3 participants. Itchy and Scratchy, or Tommy and Daly, or Pika and Raska, depending on the version of The Simpsons you watch, is the television show within another television show that has the most episodes. Up to now, there are already 107. It almost never snows in Antarctica. The snow has accumulated over many years, and the temperature does not rise enough to make it melt. In fact, much of the continent is considered a polar desert, since it receives very little annual precipitation. The ice that covers the region has formed from compacted layers over thousands and even millions of years, creating one of the largest freshwater reserves on the planet. Pokemon Go players discovered that in Moscow, Russia, many GPS signals were being falsified or modified so that they would not mark exact locations. Elevators almost always have mirrors to make them look bigger and so that people do not feel claustrophobic. During the Berlin Olympic Games in 1936, 2 Japanese pole vaulters tied for second place but refused to participate in a tiebreaker. When they returned to Japan, their medals were cut in half and joined so that each athlete had half silver and half bronze. Polar bears can eat up to 86 penguins in one day. Lawsuits have been filed against cities that have completely banned plastic bags by the Coalition in Favor of Plastic, arguing that paper bags can be just as bad or worse for the environment than plastic ones. The planet with the most earthquakes in the solar system is Venus. It trembles once or twice a day with an intensity of 5 to 9 degrees. These movements are related to its intense volcanic activity and to the internal heat it retains due to its dense atmosphere. So far, 3 people have tried to sell the secret Coca-Cola ingredient list to Pepsi, but Pepsi reported them to the FBI and to Coca-Cola itself. In Iceland, there is an elf whisperer who inspects construction sites before anything is built to make sure that no type of elf is living there. A Russian family remained isolated in Siberia without any contact with other humans for 40 years. When they were found, they did not know that the Second World War had happened. It used to be believed that only large mammal species could distinguish individual human faces, but it was discovered that bees can do it as well. However, they do it only with a set of 5,000 different images, as if they were pixels. Bees see us like a retro video game. In 2011, there was a butter shortage in Norway. There were smugglers trying to bring more of this product into the country, and there were online auctions where packages were being sold for up to $77. The set used for Sherlock Holmes's house in the 2009 movie is the same one that was used for Sirius's house in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. In Havana, Cuba, there is a park with a statue of John Lennon that is cared for by a security guard who places his glasses on him according to the time of day. The guard is there because people kept stealing the glasses from the statue. The famous stickers that indicate that a product's warranty is void if they are removed or broken have been illegal in the United States since 1975. 29% of air pollution in the city of San Francisco, United States, comes from China on the other side of the ocean. Women on average say around 20,000 words daily, 13,000 more than men. To determine whether someone can read and write in North Korea, they are asked to write the name of the supreme leader and his lineage. The first of the famous Yo Mama jokes was discovered carved into a Babylonian stone from 3,500 years ago in what is now Iraq. The stone no longer exists, but the text was preserved. The first vending machine in the world dispensed holy water. It was made in Egypt in the 1st century by a man named Hero of Alexandria. Cats can hydrate themselves by drinking seawater because of their super efficient kidneys. Blister beetles gather together until they resemble a bee. They do this to attract other bees and infest them. That is how they manage to reach the hives to feed on baby bees. When a bee arrives drunk at its hive after consuming fermented fruit, guard bees do not let it enter until it returns to normal. The guards detect its condition by its smell and by the erratic way it moves. This behavior protects the colony, since an intoxicated bee can disrupt internal order, affect communication through pheromones, and put the safety of the swarm at risk. In 1962, a Japanese man became the first person to sail solo across the entire Pacific Ocean. When he arrived in San Francisco, he was arrested for not having a passport or money. In Italy, there are more than 115,000 square miles of forests. This represents a significant portion of the national territory and has increased in recent decades thanks to reforestation programs and the abandonment of former agricultural lands. Mercury and Venus are the only planets in the solar system that do not have moons. Both are located in the innermost part of the system, and their proximity to the Sun influences their gravitational dynamics, making it difficult for them to capture or maintain stable natural satellites. In contrast, the outer planets have multiple moons, some even larger than the planet Mercury. All Syrian hamsters, the ones normally sold in pet stores, come from a single pair that was in captivity long ago. They are widely used in laboratories because their DNA is almost identical among them. When the body temperature of some beetles rises too much, they stand on their tiptoes to get away from the ground and cool off more easily. This behavior has been observed in desert species, where the sand can reach extreme temperatures. By lifting their bodies, they reduce contact with the hot surface and allow air to circulate better underneath, decreasing heat transfer and preventing overheating. In Yemen, there is a city called Mocha, where the best coffee in the world was produced in the 18th century. Currently, there is at least one coffee shop on every street, and it is an ideal tourist destination for those who love coffee. Russian citizens can identify as any ethnicity they wish, even if it is not real. According to statistics, there are Russians who identify as Babylonians, Romans, Martians, goblins, elves, and even hobbits. If you put a pearl in vinegar, in a short time it will dissolve. This happens because they are made mainly of calcium carbonate, a compound that dissolves easily in acetic acid, which is another name for vinegar. So do not put your pearls in vinegar. The first shaved ice desserts were made in China 4,500 years ago. Their specialty was cinnamon-flavored ones. Recently, the smallest species of dinosaur was discovered in China, measuring only 16 inches. The fossil, found in Liaoning province, belongs to a group of small feathered theropods that lived more than 120 million years ago. These discoveries have reinforced the theory that many modern birds descend directly from dinosaurs, showing a clearer evolutionary transition than was thought decades ago. In 2008, a teenager in Great Britain legally changed his name to Captain Fantastic faster than Superman, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Hulk, and The Flash combined. his grandmother stopped speaking to him. There is a star located 50 light-years away from planet Earth that has the composition of a giant diamond. Astronomers named it Lucy, after the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Due to low gravity, a person who weighs 220 pounds on Earth will weigh only 84 pounds on the surface of Mars. The easiest remedy to lose weight, you just have to go to Mars. Alice Walton, the heiress to the Walmart fortune and one of the wealthiest people in the world, has a history of driving under the influence of alcohol and also a history of being mysteriously released without consequence. When lightning strikes sand, due to the force and temperature with which it hits, tube-shaped glass crystals called fulgurites are formed that almost always adopt the shape of the lightning bolt and are amazing. There is a group of very wealthy people who can watch movies at home on the same day they are released in theaters in their own private screening rooms. It costs $100,000 to join that club, and it has a monthly fee of $4,000. In case you were wondering how superstars watch movies. The city of Kamikatsu in Japan will become the first city to recycle 100% of all its waste by 2015. They already recycle 80% of their trash. The plan for this city to achieve that feat began in 2003. The creator of Fortnite, Tim Sweeney, is one of the largest landowners in the state of North Carolina. He has been buying land with the purpose of preserving the ecology since 2008. In the United States, there are more public libraries than McDonald's restaurants. But guess where people go more often? According to data from library associations and corporate reports, there are more than 16,000 public libraries compared to around 13,000 McDonald's locations in the country. Even so, the daily customer traffic at the fast food chain far exceeds the average visits to libraries. At the end of the 19th century, a Scottish whiskey company trained more than 500 parrots to repeat various advertising slogans. Then they distributed them in stores and bars. That is creative advertising. Albatross birds can stay with the same partner for more than 45 years. It is one of the longest-lasting relationships in the animal kingdom. When chess was just beginning to become popular, the queen could only move diagonally one square at a time. But as real-life queens gained power, so did the piece, until it became the piece with the greatest mobility in the game. Between 1 and 3% of people can function perfectly on only 5 or 6 hours of sleep. Everyone else needs 7 to 9 hours. This small minority usually has uncommon genetic variants that allow them to complete their sleep cycles more efficiently. In most people, consistently sleeping less than recommended affects memory, mood, and long-term metabolic health. An amusement park in France uses crows to collect cigarette butts left by visitors. The crows do it in exchange for food. The project was implemented at the Puy du Fou Park, where the birds were trained to deposit the waste into small boxes that release a reward. The initiative seeks to promote environmental awareness in a creative and educational way. The only country whose name starts with the letter Q is Qatar. In Spanish, it is written with a C, but according to United Nations nomenclature, it is with a Q. All people who enter France need a passport, no matter their condition. That is why, in 1974, the Egyptian government had to issue a passport to Pharaoh Ramses II in order to transport him to France for restoration. By the way, the pharaoh has been in a mummified state for several centuries. When he arrived at the Paris airport, he received a head-of-state-style reception. There is an episode where the coyote finally catches the roadrunner. It was released on the 31st anniversary of the series. When he succeeds, the coyote holds up a sign that says, "Okay, smart guys, you always wanted me to catch him. Now what do I do?" On average, more fatal accidents are caused by taking selfies than by shark attacks worldwide. Many of these cases happen on cliffs, skyscrapers, or near moving trains where people take unnecessary risks for a photo. Various studies have pointed out that falls from height are the most frequent cause in this type of incident. During the Second World War, Germany tried to collapse the British economy by dropping millions of counterfeit bills in London. The operation, known as Bernhard, consisted of forging British pounds with such high quality that they were almost indistinguishable from real ones. The bills were produced by prisoners in concentration camps, and the plan sought to cause inflation and distrust in the British financial system. If a person is attractive, there is a greater chance that others will assume they are intelligent and hardworking, even if they are not. This is known as the halo effect. This phenomenon was identified by the psychologist Edward Thorndike in 1920, and it describes how a single positive quality can influence the overall perception of someone. In 2013, a man named Ted Jorgensen found out that his son is Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, whom he had abandoned when he was only a few months old. Jeff considers Miguel Bezos his father, whose last name he adopted. Manatees can freeze in water that is at a temperature of less than 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Their fat is not designed to insulate them from the cold. The tires of the Bugatti Veyron cost $42,000 per set and only last 15 minutes at top speed. In addition to that, the rims have to be replaced every 2 tire changes, and those cost $69,000. It is the price of having the fastest production car in the world, or at least it was at one point. In Warsaw, the capital of Poland, people who are born on public transportation receive free access for life. This curious initiative works more as a symbolic gesture than as a frequent benefit, since births on trams or buses are very rare. When it happens, the Transport Authority usually gives a special lifetime pass as a souvenir of the unusual event. The famous Ghostbusters logo had legal problems when, after becoming popular, Harvey Comics sued Columbia Pictures because they said it resembled the ghost Fatso from Casper. In Italy, in the church Madonna delle Lacrime in Immacolata, there is a stuffed crocodile hanging from the ceiling that is 500 years old. It is the oldest known taxidermy piece, and for some reason, there are crocodiles hanging in other churches in Italy and throughout Europe. After bus drivers in Sweden were forbidden from wearing shorts, the next day they showed up wearing skirts, arguing that if their female coworkers were allowed to wear them, they should be allowed as well. In the 19th century, experts warned about a disease that could affect people called bicycle face, which supposedly meant that the facial expression people made while riding a bicycle could become permanent. Obviously, that condition does not exist. In ancient Egypt, they sometimes used onions to fill empty spaces when preparing mummies, often using them as false eyes. In the city of St. Augustine in Florida, United States, there is a pirate museum where they have original flags used by real pirates, as well as the only known treasure chest that belonged to a pirate. The asterisk and pound buttons on the first push-button telephones were placed there simply because there was extra space, in the hope that someday a use would be found for them. Some of Napoleon's soldiers read the recipe for a chicken broth called consumo in a Spanish book they stole. The French called it consommé, and to this day, that is what it is known as. In India, more than 10,000 people are bitten by cobras each year. The country has one of the highest rates of snake bites in the world, especially in rural areas where access to medical care can be limited. Robert Englund, famous for playing Freddy Krueger, auditioned for the role of Han Solo, and when he returned from the audition, he convinced his friend Mark Hamill, who at that time was living on his couch, to audition for the role of Luke Skywalker. As we now know, Hamill got the role in Star Wars. According to Andrew, the Duke of York, members of the British royal family are forbidden from playing Monopoly because it is a game that can cause arguments. Please do not tell him that Mario Party or Smash exist, or we might lose the royal family. Actor Vin Diesel, besides being the voice of Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy in all languages, was also the voice of the Iron Giant in the 1999 movie. The city of London, England, was founded by the Romans, who at the time named it Londinium. It was established around the year 43 after Christ as an important trading port on the banks of the River Thames. Over time, it grew to become one of the most relevant centers of Roman Britain, and even today, remains of walls and structures from that era are preserved beneath the modern city. The time when the most money was transported from one place to another in all of history occurred during the Second World War, when 186,332 gold bars and countless coins were sent to Canada from the United Kingdom. And by the way, nothing was lost along the way. Russians are not the ones who drink the most vodka, despite it being their national beverage. 3 of their former Soviet republics surpassed them: Belarus, Moldova, and Lithuania. The first scarecrows known in history were made more than 3,000 years ago by the Egyptians to protect their wheat fields around the Nile River. Even though 1/3 of all of Russia's territory is located within the Arctic Circle, almost all of the country's cities are located farther south, where the climate is more temperate. Cats instinctively do not like drinking water from a bowl that is next to their food, because normally any water near their prey is contaminated. That is why they prefer to look for running water, such as from toilets. Antarctica was not discovered until 1820, and 75 years had to pass before a human set foot on its surface. It was the last place on Earth to be colonized. An electric car from 1912 remained functional until the 1980s, when one of its batteries had to be replaced because liquid leaked inside it. Obviously, car companies today are not interested in selling models that last 70 years. At Google headquarters, and in several of its offices around the world, there are ball pits for adults so that employees can have a little fun. In 1945, the British engineer Jacob Alfred Ewing proposed at the United Nations that nothing new should be invented anymore, that everything had already been created and there was nothing left to discover. His proposal was rejected. The famous anchor tattoo was worn by sailors to indicate that they had already crossed the Atlantic Ocean. This symbol represented stability and hope in the midst of dangerous voyages and long months at sea. In 2003, United States troops found more than $650 million inside the walls of Saddam Hussein's palace. In the past, shirts with detachable collars were in style, so they could be washed more easily because that is the part that gets dirty the fastest. Even though only 5% of people in India are on Facebook, they are already the third most common nationality on that social network. Most beer bottles are brown because glass of that color protects them from ultraviolet rays that cause them to spoil. Glass of other colors, or clear glass, does not offer the same protection. Bees can rise and fly higher than Mount Everest, at more than 29,000 feet above sea level. In scientific experiments, it has been observed that some species tolerate very low levels of oxygen and extreme temperatures, maintaining flight through rapid wing beats. An atomic clock called NIST-F2 was created in 2014 in the United States, and they say it is so accurate that it will not lose 1 second until 300 million years have passed. There is no McDonald's restaurant in Iceland. The last one closed in 2009, during the financial crisis that strongly affected the country. The increase in import costs made maintaining the franchise unprofitable. The largest tsunami ever recorded occurred in Alaska in 1958. The main wave reached 1,692 feet in height, taller than the Empire State Building at 1,444 feet. The first passengers of a hot air balloon were a duck, a rooster, and a sheep. The flight took place in 1783 before the French court as proof that a living being could survive at altitude. The experiment was organized by the Montgolfier brothers, pioneers of aeronautics, and lasted several minutes before landing successfully. Beethoven hated giving piano lessons unless his students were very talented, or were attractive women, or both. The ska punk and reggae rock band Sublime managed to sneak into a studio where they recorded their first album. A friend let them in without permission. The studio staff never found out. Paying for the place would have cost them $30,000. In 1948, Ford refused to take over the Volkswagen company for free when it was in crisis at that time. Ford regrets that decision now. Daniel Radcliffe had to try on 160 different pairs of glasses before finding the ones that fit him perfectly to play the role of Harry Potter. In the end, the glasses were from the brand Savile Row. Pizza Hut delivered a pizza to the International Space Station in 2001. They paid Russia $1 million to transport it through space to the station. During the Second World War, the Japanese built a death ray inspired by the ideas of Nikola Tesla. The only problem was that the enemies had to stay in the same place for 10 minutes for it to work. The unusual colors of the sky in the famous painting The Scream by Edvard Munch are not invented. At that time, there was a volcanic eruption so strong that it changed sunsets around the world due to the climate change it triggered, creating those unusual colors that inspired many works of art. In December 2013, Iceland's elf protectors asked the Road and Coastal Commission to abandon a highway project in order to prevent disturbing an elf habitat that even has a small church for these creatures. Once, the United States Secret Service found Boris Yeltsin, when he was still president of Russia, near the White House in a drunken state and trying to take a taxi to go get pizza. For most birds, avocados are poisonous. This is due to a substance called persin, present in the pulp, the skin, and the pit. In species such as parrots and canaries, it can cause respiratory problems, fluid accumulation around the heart, and even death, which is why it is never recommended to offer them this food. The potato was so important to the Incas that they deified it by naming it Papa Mama, a goddess who later became Pachamama, the deity of fertility of the earth and good harvests. Some of the most expensive Mercedes cars, when they detect an imminent collision, play pink noise that emits a frequency that causes the ears to tense up. This helps prevent hearing damage from the noise caused by the crash. In 2007, the Parliament and Tourism Board of Scotland spent £125,000 to create the slogan, "Welcome to Scotland. Geniuses." Tigers have white spots on the back of their ears that look like eyes. They evolved that way so that animals that wanted to attack them from behind would think they were real eyes. The role of Captain Jack Sparrow in the movie Pirates of the Caribbean was initially offered to Jim Carrey, but he turned it down to star in Bruce Almighty. The first word Pablo Picasso said was pencil. Apparently, from that moment, he had found his passion. Switzerland has so many nuclear shelters that its entire population could take shelter. It is the only country that can boast that. There is a giant pink slug that is found only in an isolated forest located on an extinct volcano in Australia. It is the Treboniophorus, known as the Mount Kaputar pink slug, which lives exclusively in Mount Kaputar National Park in New South Wales. Its bright color may help it camouflage among the moist, reddish leaves of the forest. The first 3D movie was shown in 1922, a silent film called The Power of Love that even had an alternate ending depending on which eye you closed. Unfortunately, the original reels were lost. The cheapest smartphone is 3 times faster than the fastest supercomputer in 1976, which cost $80 million. In the series Star Trek, teleportation was used frequently because the budget did not allow for scenes in which the ships landed on planets. Greek yogurt was actually invented in Turkey. King Henry VII of England used to sleep with a giant axe next to him to defend himself from any threat. If you sneeze while traveling at 62 miles per hour, your eyes will be closed for 49 feet. This is because a sneeze can last around 1 second, during which you momentarily lose vision. At that speed, you travel almost 92 feet per second, so even a fraction of a second without seeing can represent several feet traveled without visual control. Avocados exist today thanks to the giant sloths that became extinct 13,000 years ago. They were the only animals capable of digesting the large seeds of avocado fruit. Fortunately, after the extinction of those animals, humans began cultivating them, and now we have guacamole because of that. We still have parts in our ears that remain from the time when humans could move their ears like dogs to direct them toward the sound we were hearing. The nerve endings still exist, but the tendons that controlled those nerves are no longer there. The medieval chastity belts that are known were actually manufactured in the 18th or 19th century as a joke. They were never used in the Middle Ages. At the end of the 19th century, a baboon named Jack was hired by a railway company in South Africa. He worked there for years and never made a single mistake. Giraffes can run faster than horses and can retain water longer than a camel. In addition, they sleep only 30 minutes each day, divided into naps of no more than 5 minutes. On one of his expeditions, Marco Polo tried a type of pasta in Fanfo, what is now Sumatra, and he liked it so much that he took it back to Italy, where it became fashionable, and they called it lasagna. Due to an agreement between France and Monaco, the principality will cease to be a sovereign state and will become a French protectorate on the day the ruling family has no heirs. Christopher Walken worked as a lion tamer before becoming an actor. He has said in interviews that the lioness he worked with behaved like a very large dog. Readers of Rolling Stone magazine voted Nirvana as one of the worst bands of the 90s, in a list that also included Creed, Limp Bizkit, and Hanson. Bob the Builder has more songs that reached #1 on the music charts in Great Britain than Nirvana, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and Radiohead combined. Seawater baths in bathtubs became fashionable in France and in other parts of the world in 1824, when the Duchess of Berry took her bathtub to the beach of Dieppe in the English Channel. After a test screening of the movie Apollo 13, a member of the audience said he did not like it because, according to him, it had a typical Hollywood ending, and that the crew in real life would not have survived. But as we know, the movie is based on something that really did happen. The molecules that produce the smell of lemons and oranges are exactly the same, but somehow our nose can tell them apart. There is a dating app called Hater that suggests people based on the things they hate. In France, there is a company that can make a perfume from the body scent of any person. You only have to give them their dirty clothes. These small crustaceans are called krill. They live in all the oceans, and blue whales eat around 40 million of them every day. The name Himalaya comes from the Sanskrit ima, which means snow, and alaya, which means home or dwelling. So it is the place where the snow lives and rests. In India, There are more vegetarians than in the entire rest of the world combined. The cat that Vito Corleone has in one of the most important scenes of the movie The Godfather was actually a stray cat that liked to go to the film set for food and then liked staying there, so they put it in the scene. The Fibonacci sequence and the approximation of the golden spiral were described by the Indian mathematician Pingala approximately 1,200 years before Fibonacci did. Costa Rica does not have an army. It was abolished in 1949, but that does not mean they do not have weapons. The country's police have tanks and machine guns. Only 1% of police cases have been solved through DNA analysis, but in movies, they almost always seem to be solved that way. There are 36,000 fried chicken restaurants in Korea. That is about the same number of McDonald's fast food restaurants in the entire world. Koreans truly love fried chicken. But I bet that in Mexico, we have even more taco shops. When Wonder Woman first joined the Justice League in the comics, she volunteered to be the team's secretary. The Taj Mahal was disguised twice to make it look like a pile of bamboo and thus avoid being bombed. The first time was during the Second World War, and the second time during the Indo-Pakistani War in 1971. In South Korea, there is an emergency number to report spies. It is 113. This line is handled by the National Intelligence Service and is used to report suspicious activities related to espionage or threats to national security. In China, people do not recognize Elvis Presley by his name. In that land, he is known as Mao Wang, which means the Cat King. In Tehran, the capital of Iran, there are rats so large that the government deployed a team of snipers to eliminate them in 2013. The Finnish language had no written form until the 16th century, when a man named Mikael Agricola wanted to translate the Bible from Latin into Finnish, which was his native language. So he created the writing system that is still used today. To become an astronaut, it is essential to learn Russian. It is a requirement in case there is a problem on the International Space Station at a time when it is under Russian control. Thanks to recycling, almost 75% of all the aluminum ever produced is still in use today. This is because aluminum can be recycled indefinitely without losing its properties. In addition, recycling it uses up to 95% less energy than producing it from scratch, which makes it one of the most sustainable and valuable materials in the world. The movie Wonder Woman is banned in Lebanon because the lead actress Gal Gadot is an Israeli citizen, and Lebanon is officially at war with Israel. 2,000 years ago, an Arab merchant stored milk in a lambskin bag because that was what was used at that time, since plastic bags did not exist. Suddenly, he saw that the milk had curdled into a semi-liquid mass. That is how cheese was created. In Thailand, to express laughter written as ha ha ha, people use 5555 because the number 5 in that country is pronounced like ha. In Japan, it is www for the word laughter in Japanese, wadai. It is kind of very strange, right? 5555 www. In 1964, in an art gallery in Sweden, 4 paintings by an unknown artist named Pierre Brassard were exhibited. All the art critics who passed by rated the work as exceptional. There was only one who said that only a chimpanzee could have done that, and he was actually correct. It was all a plan by a journalist to see how the critics would react, and Pierre was a 4-year-old chimpanzee named Peter. Orange juice has more electrolytes than the famous sports drinks for athletes. Naturally, it provides potassium, magnesium, and small amounts of calcium, essential minerals for muscle function and cellular hydration. In Madagascar, up until the 17th century, there were birds that measured nearly 10 feet and weighed more than half a ton. People called them elephant birds. Unfortunately, they became extinct due to hunting and deforestation. They also existed in many parts of the world, but the last ones lived there in Madagascar. Grizzly bears have such strong bite force that they could crush a bowling ball. But they generally prefer other things to eat. Their bite pressure can easily exceed 1,000 psi, enough to crush thick bones. Even so, their diet is mostly omnivorous and includes berries, roots, fish such as salmon, and small mammals, depending on the season and the region where they live. Catfish are the only animals that have an odd number of whiskers, and although they are called whiskers, they are not made of hair. They are extensions of skin. The state of Guanajuato in Mexico measures 11,821 square miles, which is a few square miles more than the entire country of Belgium in Europe. In 1942, there was a man known as the Phantom Barber who entered people's homes in Mississippi, United States during the night and cut their hair. Young elephants still do not have full control of their trunk when they drink water, which is why they constantly fall when they try to do it. A shipment of parakeets was accidentally released at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York in the late 60s. The birds liked the area and currently continue living in the Brooklyn area. Every December 25th, in a city in Peru, Takanakui is celebrated, where men, women, and children settle their problems from the year by having fist fights. After that, everyone goes out to drink and they reconcile. If you add up the mass of all the electrons moving at any given moment that make up the internet, they equal almost 2 ounces. There are now 4 spacecraft that we have launched into space and that have traveled so far that they have passed beyond the solar system. Voyager 1, Voyager 2, Pioneer 10, and Pioneer 11. Ostriches can kick like donkeys, imitate the roar of a lion, and even make the sound of a snake. Their powerful legs can exert enough force to seriously injure a predator, and males produce deep, low sounds that can be mistaken for roars at a distance. They also use hisses and whistles as a defense mechanism when they feel threatened. At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, it is possible to train pirate skills: archery, fencing, firearms, and sailing. The movie E.T. the Extraterrestrial was banned in Sweden, Finland, and Norway because the government considered that it portrayed adults as the enemies of children. The famous Pez candies are named after the German word for peppermint, which is Pfefferminz. Pez started as a mint company in Vienna, Austria in 1927. At any time within the next 1,000 years, a supernova could occur close enough to planet Earth that it would appear as bright as the sun and cause there to be no difference between day and night for more than a week. The Eiffel Tower was originally going to be built in Barcelona, Spain in 1888, but the project was rejected because the tower was considered strange and very expensive to build. Diamonds are not actually that expensive or difficult to obtain. They are now found in much greater abundance than before. The only reason they have such high demand is because the company De Beers dedicated itself to advertising campaigns to sell more engagement rings. They own almost all the diamond mines in the world. Many of the best Scrabble players in the world are from Thailand and do not speak English. Even though the tournaments are held in English, the players memorize the words and purposely do not learn their meanings because that gives them an advantage. Disney once sued some daycare centers for putting its characters in murals. When Universal found out about this, they let them use Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones. In Finland, people who earn a doctorate receive a top hat and a sword along with their diploma upon graduation. This academic tradition symbolizes freedom of thought and the defense of knowledge. The hat, usually black, represents intellectual authority, while the sword refers to the fight for truth, a custom that dates back to university ceremonies of the 19th century. Uranus has 27 moons discovered so far, 5 large moons and 22 small ones. The largest is called Titania. Even though it is practically made entirely of sugar, a normal-sized cotton candy contains 30 grams of sugar, 9 grams less than a can of Coca-Cola. Beethoven was the first musician to receive a salary simply for composing whatever he wanted and whenever he wanted. Of the 10 largest statues in the world, 8 of them are representations of Buddha. Most are located in Asian countries such as China, Thailand, and Myanmar, where Buddhism has a deep cultural and religious influence. There is a prison in Brazil where inmates can pedal on exercise bikes to generate electricity for the public lighting of a nearby city. If they do this, they can reduce their sentence. The average altitude reached by commercial flights is equal to the distance to the deepest point of the ocean. The venom of cone snails could be used to create a painkiller 1,000 times more powerful than morphine. These marine snails of the genus Conus produce toxins called conotoxins, capable of blocking nerve signals with great precision. In the early days of Google, it could process only 30 to 50 pages per second. Now that number has increased to millions per second. The wheel was invented hundreds of years after boats, woven clothing, ropes, baskets, and even flutes. It simply had not occurred to anyone before. The actor Danny Trejo tries to choose to play villains in movies who end up losing to teach people that that is what happens to evil people. Tomatoes were first cultivated in Mexico and did not arrive in Italian cuisine until the 17th century. Margarine is named after the Greek word margaron, which means pearl whiteness. since under a microscope it appears to be made up of millions of white spheres. Thanks to the fall of Constantinople, scholars fled to cities in Italy, bringing knowledge back to Western Europe. That event was one of the triggers of the Renaissance. Ninja show companies in Japan have reported that there is a shortage of ninjas. Apparently, it is a tradition that is disappearing. North Koreans are obsessed with choco pie desserts made in South Korea. There is even a black market for this food. When a North Korean soldier defected, crossed the demilitarized zone, and was left in poor condition, South Korea adopted him and gave him a lifetime supply of choco pies. There are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on planet Earth, but there are more atoms in a single grain of sand than stars in the entire universe. Cooking or heating food in a microwave oven does not remove nutrients from food, as some people say. On the contrary, it is one of the most nutritious methods of preparing food. 46% of the entire world's population depends on fresh water from rivers that originate in the Tibet region. From the Tibetan Plateau rise major river systems that supply densely populated countries in Asia, supporting agriculture, hydroelectric energy, and human consumption. That is why this area is known as the Water Tower of Asia, since its melting snow and glaciers sustain billions of people. Bullfrogs never sleep. Studies conducted in the 1960s showed that even when they appear to be at rest with their eyes closed, they continue to react to external stimuli as if they were awake. The exact marker of the South Pole has to be repositioned every year because the blocks of ice where it sits move 33 feet each year. In the Czech Republic, it is common to order food first and the drink last, as if it were dessert. Here, it is the opposite. The first beverage consumed in outer space was a Coca-Cola. In 2016, a man was arrested for throwing an alligator through the drive-through window at a Wendy's fast food restaurant. You know, very casual. Between 63rd Street and 76th Street in New York City, scientists discovered a species of ant that is not found anywhere else on the planet. Singapore, Zurich, Switzerland, Paris, France, Tokyo, Japan, and Oslo, Norway are the most expensive cities to live in worldwide. Despite their enormous size, blue whales cannot swallow anything larger than a beach ball, so they cannot eat people, in case you were wondering. The first time a car reached 62 miles per hour was in 1899, and that car was completely electric. Hummingbirds are the only birds that can fly backward. In addition, their metabolism is so fast that they have to be eating almost all the time. The Invisible Woman from the Fantastic Four was mainly created because the author, Jack Kirby, was too lazy to draw one more character with all the details. So when she was invisible, he only drew her with little lines.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.